Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Let's Talk About a podcast. We're in for an exciting episode this week. I highly recommend you watch the video of this, but if not, no worries. The audio will be just fine for this particular episode. We just wanted to let you know that we have maybe one or two more episodes, I think, coming out for this season. And I hope you guys have liked it. It's kind of been an extension of who we are as a church. We've been having different staff on, some different testimonies from the church. And so I really hope that this has helped you guys get a better feel of who we are as Grace Life Bible Church. To conclude out our staff interviews, today we have with us the mastermind behind all of this. The podcast, and he edits the videos, he audio mixes, he does all that stuff. He's the director of digital arts here at Grace Life Bible Church, and so in just a minute we'll have on the show Andrew Petz. We're back. Andrew, welcome. Glad to have you on the show.
Thank you.
This is pretty exciting. I know you sit behind the camera a lot, so you get to be in front of the camera this time around. So you're the director of digital arts and technology support. I believe that's your full title.
Yes, it is.
But just kind of, let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about how you ended up at Grace Life Bible Church, and then what all goes into your role here.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. This is quite a treat. So it's kind of a funny story. So my wife and I, we were, so I went to Grace University, and majored in Christian camping ministry. And John Holmes was actually my advisor. So I was there 2015 through 2018. And then for my senior year, the year that my wife and I got married, we did the internship up at Forest Springs Camp and Conference Center. And so then after that year, we came back to Omaha, where started working, got an apartment. We were going to a different church here in town that some friends went to. And then in December of 2020, I believe it was, John reached out because he knew. So in college, I also was on the worship team, and I did similar stuff, tech, sound and lighting, production in college. And so he reached out to me and said, "Hey, our worship leader is actually leaving. Would you be interested in applying for the job?" And I said, sure. So I came and met with him and a few other people, and we talked for a while. Really good conversation. And so then John's recommendation was, hey, come for a couple weeks, just kind of get acquainted, see what you think of the church, and we'll kind of go from there. It's like, all right. And as you have guessed by now, the wonderful Christine Kleiner got that role. And no hard feelings at all. It's she does a phenomenal job, probably better than what I could ever do. But we really enjoyed this church, the smaller feel, just being able to get plugged in. We got plugged in pretty quickly here, and helped out with different things. And over time, this position opened up to become available. And so, when it was all said and done, here I am, just kind of landed in this job. So it's been a lot of fun. I started last July. And so what my job is, so I'm the director of digital arts and technology support. So first and foremost, my job is to make sure the front of house sound sounds good. The tech board here in our worship center, that's our number one priority, because it's, the most important thing is people coming in person. As I say a lot, it doesn't matter if you're a tech person or on the worship team or, a greeter or anything like that. Our main focus is to eliminate distractions so that our congregation, including ourselves, that we can enter into the presence of God without distractions. And so that is the first priority, is to make sure that our front of house is sounding good. And so when I came in, there were a few changes we were done, some overhauling issues to really make sure that our in-house sound is the best quality that it can be. And so that's the first part of the job. The second part is the digital. Well, okay, so that's like the third part. The second part is just kind of in-house infrastructure. All of our internet stuff, all of our tech booth. We have a small tech booth also in our multi-purpose room. I keep track of all of that stuff. I work pretty closely with Christine with getting the tech stuff ready for Sundays. I'm building out the slides that we do, just making sure Sunday mornings flow properly, turn on the TVs, the confidence monitors, make sure our live stream, everybody's live streaming these days. And so, make sure our live stream is doing great and doing what I want it to do. And so that's like the second role of it. And then there's some overlap with the security team, with our security cameras, but don't really do too much with that. But the other big portion then is the digital realm. I oversee our church's Facebook page. We've got Instagram, basically anywhere social we're posting. We're this podcast. We have another podcast that's our main church services, where you can go on Spotify or Apple Podcast or whatever. And if you've missed a week, you can actually go back and find John's sermons or whoever's preaching that week, and take a listen to that. And so then we're, making videos for that. And Mission Sunday that we have either coming up or have just passed. I'm not sure when this is coming out yet. Doing some video work for that. So just kind of different stuff like that. So what all have you tried as avenues to get content out? What have you seen work? What have you seen failed? And what platforms are we using right now? And what kind of is the direction that you're going to take in the future? Yeah. So right now we're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. We've got 2 different avenues on Spotify, or the audio realm. And those are kind of the big points. Especially like, so my background is in camp ministry, and so we took a class on marketing. And so one of the things they were always talking about was like, there's not necessarily a need to be on every platform, but kind of just what platforms are going to reach the demographic that you're trying to hit. And so like with camp ministry, a lot of the kids who come to camp, their mom signs them up for it. So where are moms in their 30s and 40s? They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. And so you target those social media platforms. And so those are really the 2 main ones we use as well, because there was a study done at least a couple of years ago that when it comes to camp and church, the mom is the one making a lot of those decisions. And so you target that. And so I don't really see see the need for us to be on Twitter. You know, I have a personal account on Twitter, but even then, I don't use it for a whole lot, and so there's not really a good purpose behind it. And so there's no need to be everywhere. But also a big portion, you know, as our church is growing, is bringing in more. Bringing in more youth, bringing in more younger couples, and so then you start moving to TikTok, you know, and seeing what that's about. And so we've posted a few things there, as for the success of it, it's hard to tell. We live in such an interesting digital age right now, and like. So there's been a new study showing that more and more people in the generation below me who are younger are starting to move away from Instagram and TikTok, and they're starting to unplug. And I noticed that even with myself, you know, as I was running all of these things, my brain was being rewired, as it does with anything that you spend a lot of time on. And so all of a sudden I was focusing on 30-second videos and just swiping TikTok, and so it became for me really hard to actually sit down and have longer conversations or watch anything longer than 30 seconds. And so I don't find TikTok helpful. Our church has an account, but because I don't have it on my phone anymore, we're not really using it anymore. And so you know, we try to do the things that's going to bring culture in. And I know there's plenty of people still on TikTok. You know, that's not to just bag on that, but I don't know. I feel like, you know, just pushing Facebook and Instagram are kind of getting the job done. You know, we've seen an increase in, you know, views or what have you on our YouTube. You know, we push that a bit. But, you know, I want to focus for a second on what is right for our church. Because I grew up in a small church, and I was looking around at every other church except my own going, so what are they doing to get more people in? And I was seeing, you know, the rise of the light show, the fog machine, you know, the big bands. And so I said, well, that's clearly what we have to do. You know, we have to, our church has to mimic this church, which mimics this church, which mimics this church. And so it took me a very long time to realize, like, that's not necessarily what's best for our current church. And so even here, like the things that we do, it's to help reflect who we are as a church and who we're trying to reach as a church. You know, I don't think that becoming the next big church is a wise idea or a smart idea. You know, 300-400 people, I feel like that's a pretty good size. But that's just, you know, that's just my opinion. And so, like, when we're looking at how we're even advertising and pushing and using social media, it's what are we trying to do? Like, even so John uses a lot of slides in his sermons. And so that used to bug me, I mean, just a little bit a while back, because it made it really hard to take little snippets of like a really powerful moment, like a wow factor. It was hard to take that clip and advertise it on social media because there was a map next to his face or what have you. And so even in that, I had to rethink, like, I know that a lot of other churches are doing this, but also a lot of other churches going into branding, they use the branding of that person. You know, you don't really see, at least for me, I'm on Facebook, Sunday morning rolls around. I don't see this church, and this church live. I see Stephen Furtick is live, Louis Giglio is live, all of these pastors. And so through this one person, you get to see the church service. And one of the first things John said was, there's not going to be a John Holmes public figure. We're going to be pushing the brand of our church. And so even like in that way, like we're very different from a lot of other churches, because I don't think that our goal is to mimic other churches. Our goal is to mimic Christ. And so that means doing what's best for our local church. And so even if we don't advertise that heavily, like I've toned back a little bit on that. It's like church growth is good for sure. But at some point, all this advertising, I think, becomes unhelpful, especially in this day and age with all the church scandals and leaders. Like it's no surprise to anybody under 45 that people are leaving the church. You know, we look at all of these leaders who we have thrown up on a pedestal, you know, and we're seeing what they taught us years ago, and now there's sexual abuse, there's all of this other stuff, and you're like, well, we can't trust you anymore. You know, and we shouldn't have put them up in that high of a place anyways, you know, and that's just a side tangent. But yeah, so it's I don't really know if one is, going back to the social media, then I don't know if one is better than the other. I really, now I'm convinced that social media is such a tool, and we use it to the benefit of our own congregations and not just doing whatever other church is doing. Well, it definitely seems like you have done a lot of thinking and research and study as you're going through and figuring out what's best for the church. It really seems like you've been doing your homework. Oh yeah, for sure. It's my brain never shuts off. It's always thinking about this, that, or the other thing. And, you know, I tell John a lot, like, most of this job, I feel like, is either researching or a lot of behind the scenes stuff. But it's crucial, I think, in as we keep moving in a more post-Christian world. You know, we have to figure out what it looks like to keep the gospel of Jesus on the forefront of all of that, you know. And I don't know, maybe that's arrogant to say because God doesn't need us to do anything. But no, I do. I spend a lot of time and energy trying to figure out what's going to be the best fit for our church. You know, John says it a lot, that, you know, we do the best we can to shepherd the flock that God has given us. And, you know, I realized I can get bogged down so easily by looking around at everything going on in the American church. And you know, the most important thing is to keep my eyes fixed on Jesus and not the American church, because they got issues for sure. But yeah, so keeping our eyes off of the big church, on the local church, on the congregation that God has given us. And, you know, if God takes this and wants to bring in thousands of people and wants to put us on that stage, and like, he's gonna do it. You know, there's nothing that he can't do, but I don't think man was meant to be in such a spotlight. And so, you know, we do what we can for those, you know, loving our neighbors that are next door to us in our own city. I think that's the most important thing. Yeah, very, very well said. You know, so a lot of people, you know, you hear it all the time, you know, that the digital age, that is where everything is at. That is where we're headed. There's no turning back. Do you agree with that? Do you think that we have hit that point where the only thing left to do is just to fully go on board, fully embrace everything digital? No, yeah. Well, I don't think we're beyond just going all online, you know, and I don't think that should be our goal either. there's certainly plenty of good to come from it. It's exposing a lot of weaknesses that we have in our culture. But no, I don't think the goal of the church should ever be to go fully online. As I said a minute ago, it's a good tool. Even like take this podcast for example. What is this season doing? It's you go to our website and you see the who are we, and you get like a 30-second snapshot of who we are. This season, this podcast has taken that 30 seconds and stretched it into 3-4 hours where we're breaking it down. We're talking, it's giving people more of a sense of who we are and what we're doing. And going back to how first and foremost my job is to make sure that the front of house sounds good. It's the number one reason, like it's the number one priority for a reason. Because I think the goal, we saw that with the pandemic, like the amount of mental health issues that have arisen, and the loneliness and the suicide rates and all of this other stuff. Like, humans weren't meant to not interact with other people, and I don't think the goal of the church should ever be to move fully digital. The number one goal I think is person to person, coming into the building, interacting with people face to face. And so because of that leaves an interesting question of, so then how do we utilize those tools? And I'm seeing some other churches, I follow a couple people on YouTube where they're talking about that. Like, so in person is our number one goal, right? But we still have people online watching. So how do we interact? How do we go to them? Because we don't want Christians to just come to a show. That's not what this is about. So how do we interact? How do we engage with those people who are online? And so maybe I saw another tech director at a church. He figured out a way to show a video in service, but on a whole different video at the same time, just for his online viewers, and sparking a discussion and starting the group chats, and Planning Center does a good job of that too, of being able to send your online viewers to a group chat to chat with people. And so I think there's ways to really utilize the digital realm to our benefit. It's there when you are fully behind the mission of something you believe in, you're going to do whatever it takes to get that message out there, right? Within reason, of course. And there's so many messages out there that I think are just a false gospel. Pastor John went over that quite a bit over the book of Mark, and how, he wrote the book of Mark to show that Jesus is better than all of these other false gospels coming out in the world. And so I look at this, and there's so much confusion, and because you're hearing from big name people that I would argue is a false gospel. But I stand behind the way and the message that John preaches every Sunday so strongly, whereas a part of me is like, so how do we use the social media to try to make what John is saying kind of go over the voices of these other people? And so that's like where I wrestle with really advertising versus not really. It's I believe in this message, and I believe that John is preaching the true gospel. And so how do we get that to as many people as possible? And I don't fully have an answer to that. I'm still figuring it out, but it's been a really fun journey and process as I reflect, like, how are we as Christians supposed to live? How to be in the world, but not of it, but like utilizing all these tools. So many of these things that the churches are using now for live stream are like mini versions of what movie production studios are using. And so the overlap is really like there's no difference with church gear versus, movie theater movie production gear. And so it's all how to use that to accomplish your goals. You know, what is our goal as a church? And for me, it's to take this exegetical preaching that John does and try to get it into as many hands as possible. Well, you certainly have a lot of stuff going on. Could probably sit and talk about this for a while longer, but some people probably think we're crazy enough as it is. And so we're going to go ahead and wrap this thing up. In all seriousness, I really hope that you guys enjoyed this episode, and I hope this gives you a better insight into my own life and how I choose to run things at our church. It's a little bit different, but that's kind of my heart behind it all. And so, yeah, I hope that this helps you, and we will see you next time.